life,
kindness,
people and places,
sincerity,
love,
integrity.
the incredible universe. You're listening to the Living Out Loud podcast with Natascha and Dr Vincent, where we talk about life, love and the universe. You're listening to the Living Out Loud podcast with Natascha Moy and Dr. Vincent, where we talk about life, love, and the universe. Today, we're going to be talking about meditation, and we are interviewing Andy Amos, who is a meditation expert and has a business called This Moment. Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Natascha. Hi, Dr. Vincent. Great to be here with you both. Thank you.
Dr. Vincent, I have to say that your background has just become like, you've just pumped that background like there's no tomorrow. I mean, we've come quite a long way since our first interview.
I know, and I feel that I owe it to all the 582 as of like I just checked it just now. People who have subscribed to our YouTube channel and the thousands of views that we have generated through the 7 episodes that we have uploaded. So I feel that now it's time to grow up, and it's time to not only give them good conversation, but something good to look at.
I feel a bit upset because I thought you were going to say you owed it all to me, which obviously you don't. I feel somewhat heartbroken about that, but anyway.
Yes.
We're going to be talking today about meditation and the journey around meditation and kind of how it brings you to, where you go. Now, I don't know. I have done a meditation course. I did an online one in December. I was going through a particularly poor patch, actually a very, very poor patch. And I decided that I needed to kind of learn how to manage my feelings of anxiety and stress. And so I did an online course, which was very expensive and was very relevant. Dr. Vincent, do you meditate?
I do in my own way. It is something that, which actually, when I read through the bio that you sent, Andy, as well as going through your business Instagram's post, I was actually really intrigued because there are certain things that I sort of I feel it, I can resonate with them, but there are also certain things that I want to ask you in terms of meditation, because I never really thought that meditation is for me. However, in the past 3-4 years, I'm still the same person, but I feel that I've developed layers to my core person, which I can understand and I can appreciate how meditation or how regular meditation can actually help you to grow and to go further.
So, Andy, my question to you is, you didn't start this journey at the beginning. You didn't sort of wake up and decide that you were a meditation guru. In fact, you went completely the opposite way. You started in business, in trading and fashion. Give me a little bit of, where did you grow up? Where were you born?
I was born in New Zealand, a little town called Paraparaumu, which is on the North Island, and grew up there until I was 11, and then we moved to Australia from there.
Okay, so you grew up there, and it's quite a quiet place, New Zealand. I mean, it's not a stressful, high anxiety sort of, but you decided that you wanted something that was more business orientated. So you took yourself off to, where was it? Where did you go?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Australia, and from Australia, I decided that Australia was even a bit small, so I decided to go and see the world, and I ended up in London. And that's where the journey with meditation began. And it was really trying to deal with challenges that were going on in my life at the time. I was working for a bank, running a trading infrastructure, dealing with a lot of stress. It was at a time in London where there was a lot of change going on, a little bit like this time in the world. Y2K was about to land, and we were all worried about the technical implications of that.
Y2K.
Yeah, the thing that never happened. And I had a lot of responsibility. I was probably in over my head with the job I was doing, but I was learning a lot. And I was trying to work out how I could respond to the stress I was feeling and focus in a way that was supportive to my role. And people introduced me to 2 things, 2 ancient modalities. One was yoga and one was Tai Chi. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Were you consciously looking for those 2 things, or your journey just in your journey you just stumble upon those two things?
Well, I was looking for something to help me, and two people that I respected recommended two separate paths that potentially might be able to help me. So I was definitely looking for something. I didn't know what that was going to be, but when they recommended those two disciplines, I sort of started the journey of exploring what they were about. And with yoga, what I found out pretty quickly was it wasn't just about moving my body in an asana posture. It was much more of a philosophy, which included, working with your breath more actively and understanding the mind at a deeper level. And I got interested from that point of view, because I thought, well, if I can begin to understand what my mind's doing, then perhaps that's going to help me manage the feelings, the emotions, the stress that I'm experiencing, the physical sensation in my body. And that's where it really came from. And so I began to find something that was supportive to what the needs were.
So I do a lot of yoga, and I started from a movement point of view to help me move. Actually, Dr. Vincent's tablets that he formulates and makes, and the yoga kind of fixed my back, which I talk about, all the time, the apple a day. But when I started the yoga, I remember the beginning of it, it was all about movement, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't bend over. I couldn't touch my toes. It was useless. But once my body kind of became more pliable, and the reason I'm sharing this, because I want to know if your journey is similar. I started realizing that the breath started becoming more of a focus for me than my body, because my body was automatically able to do quite a bit of it, but the breathing started becoming. And then I started becoming aware of the collective breathing of the people in the room. So that collective journey of how you breathe together. And then the idea of stillness and breath within kind of became a way to do it. And I remember the very first time that I ever tried to do any meditation was in a yoga class. And I found it absolutely excruciating. I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't I couldn't sit still. My breath was coming like ragged. It was really tricky. My mind kept on like trying to shut it off. I started to panic. And I remember getting up and walking out of the class and thinking, that's just not for me. So do you find that other people have those experiences in the meditation journey, that sense of actual panic rather than the Zen?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the inhibiting factors, is that when we begin to sit in stillness and really focus inwardly, we get a little bit of a surprise, Natasha. It's sort of not quite what we were, expecting from it. And because we don't spend much time there, we're mainly outwardly focused in the world. It's can be surprising and it can be challenging, like you said. And even the process of just turning our attention to the breath, which is something that automatically happens, fortunately for a lot of us, because otherwise we might forget. But but when we turn the attention to it, we realize that there's a lot deeper journey going on just in terms of breathing. And that can be confronting as well, because the breath is representative of what's going on in the nervous system. It's representative of the emotions we're feeling. It's representative of tension we're holding in the body. And so when you come into the awareness of going, oh, this is what's happening here, it can be a little frightening. So yes, it's really natural to have that sort of experience to begin with.
Do you think it is particularly stronger in terms of the anxiety and the panic, almost like a panic attack that you experienced? Because I, like you, Natasha, I felt exactly the same thing. I was like, I thought this was supposed to calm me down, but it gave me anxiety when I first tested it. Do you think people with specific personalities, like Natasha and I, we have both the extrovert side and introvert side of us, but I know you in real life, and both of us are very outgoing. Do you think, Andy, it is something that probably is affected by our personality, or do people with introverted self feel that too?
I think all people feel it to a degree, because even introverted people, a lot of the time introverted people are inwardly focused, but their minds are still going around, chewing over what's going on for them. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Why can't I be more extroverted? So they're caught in a similar cycle. Yours might be outwardly focused to distract you from who you are. Theirs is an inward focus to distract them from who they really are. And the confronting part about moving into the awareness of what your mind is doing is noticing that this is truly who I am. Wow. You know, if we were able to look into your mind and see every thought that was going on, that would be a scary thing for all of us outside. If anyone was to look into my mind and see every thought that was going on, they'd go, whoa, that's a bit of a horror show going on. And what we're facing into to begin with is a sense of, oh, that's what's really going on. So I don't think it's necessarily introverted versus extroverted. I think it's just the journey to self-awareness to begin with can be a little confronting.
So I have this attitude, well, and it's not a good belief system necessarily, that when I look at people who have, you know, they're yogis and they manage meditation on a regular daily basis, and I always think of them as probably more evolved and better people. And I always think that they have a better way of living and that their lives are better than mine. You know, so I'm not looking at social media going, oh my God, that person, you know, is so pretty. I'm looking at the person who's doing, like you, Andy, for instance. I would look at you and think, to me, I would assume you were a superior person because you have managed to kind of do that. But I think that's probably not really fair to you or to myself to really think like that. So highly effective and successful people, do they struggle with the idea that meditation is so hard to achieve when they are so used to doing everything so well?
Yes, that can definitely be an impediment. I would observe that high achievers, often they would be labeled with, you know, A-type personalities, have a very gung-ho, if I do this, if I set my intention towards this, then there's a goal-orientated task and I'm going to get there no matter what, okay? Because that's just who I am, because I can do that. The state of meditation, because meditation is a state of being, is almost the opposite of that. It's about allowing what is to just be there.
What do you mean by the state of being? Sorry.
So meditation is not so much, people talk about doing meditation, but meditation is much more a state of being. It's a highly calm and still state. It's a highly wakeful state. It's highly energized and deeply clear in terms of our thinking, the clarity with which we see. And it's a very alert state. And so we're cultivating, what we do when we meditate is we practice techniques to build skills in order to be able to hold that state, to be in that state. Because think about anything that you do. Think about all of the work research you do. Think about the writing you do, Natascha. When your mind is clear, when you are calm and still, it creates space for ideas to emerge. There's clarity of thinking, there's clarity of communication. So what we're looking to do with meditating is to cultivate these skills that enable us to sit and be in this state. And not just when we're doing the practice, but when we walk out into life. When we're sitting here right now, I'm in a state of meditation, just still and calm, listening to what you're saying so that I can give a response that's appropriate, that might be supportive, that might help someone receive a piece of information that's going to be helpful for them to take their next step in meditating. So it's a state that we're trying to cultivate. And it's a deep state that allows us to look inside ourselves. If we're always focused outwards, which we mostly are, outwardly in the world, looking out for motivation, looking for inspiration, looking for how I should be turning up in the world. We're looking outwardly. One of you mentioned Instagram, right? We're looking at Instagram and going, oh, well, they're doing this, they're doing that. We're not really giving ourselves a chance to know ourselves. And so the state of meditation is about helping us create or cultivate this way of being to know ourselves at a much deeper level.
That is actually one thing that that was on my list to ask you or to mention, and I would like your opinion on that, because one of your posts was talking about connection, and it's when I read that post, it was in my mind, I thought that, wow, this is a little bit ironic, because in the world where we have access to high-speed connection, I think maybe we are the generation that probably on the flip side, don't really connect with people, don't really connect with nature, and probably most importantly, we don't really connect with ourselves, which explain exactly what you just explained about the state of being and how whether or not people are successful in life, it may be a hindrance for them to do meditation.
Can
Well, it
I?
is. Yeah. I'm sorry, Natasha, you.
No, I was going to just interject quickly because I know you're going to answer this question. And I have a very different view on our modern times to quite a lot of people. I tend to believe that we have more tools now than we've ever had before to actually build better connection and to actually share things more than we ever have before. So if I look back into the 60s or, those supposedly the heyday when we all played in the mud, I'm kind of looking at a time where people could only talk to the people in their local community or through a media source. Whereas now you can share an idea like meditation across the entire world. You have the ability to connect in a whole lot of different ways. And so I'm wondering, I think meditation now is far more prevalent than it would have been, before. And I'm not sure how that ties into Dr. Vincent's question, but I'm kind of he's looking at the disconnect of technology, and I'm looking at the fact that I think technology connects.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is two different views there, and I think to come to yours perhaps first, Natasha. Yes, we have more tools available than ever before to enable us to connect in ways that we haven't been able to before. However, my observation is that these tools are beginning to take over the way, our behavioral way of using those tools. And so we're becoming attached to those. And through those tools, we're also being able to filter who we truly are in a way that was never possible before. So I think there's a view that is developing, and I'm observing in people, is that there's a conflict between who I'm presenting myself through all of these online platforms as, and who I am in person. And we've got to remember, and people don't, we're becoming so adjusted to going, this is truth, this is life. We've got to remember that the view we see of anybody else's life through Instagram, through Facebook, is a highly edited version of what their life is about. And yet in our minds, we're building a picture of saying, this is who this person is. This is always what they're doing. And we're not presenting, there's no allowance for the fact that the human journey involves suffering. It involves challenge. That's what makes us who we are. But we don't want to present that side of ourselves. And so the platforms are presenting a very convenient mechanism for us not to engage. And I think you're right. I think we are losing a sense of human connection. And we are, our DNA that is shared with chimpanzees means that we like to touch. We like to be in proximity with each other. And there is definitely, science and evidence-based research demonstrating that there are biological changes happening that are potentially detrimental to how we interact as people.
Do you think maybe at the same time as those things that are detrimental, there is a more global consciousness coming about, which actually informs? I mean, somebody like me, for instance, was never interested in meditation. I was never particularly interested, I always dabbled a little bit, but, in the last 3 years, I'm obsessed with yoga. If I don't get to a mat 3-4 times a week, my week is off. I'm not doing well. And I kind of crave that conscious sigh that you have. And I always think that it connects me to not only the people in the room with me, but the people outside the room in that suburb, that then connects me to that city, that then connects me to the world. And I get that sense when I'm in a yoga studio and we're working quite hard, that there is a massive global consciousness that is working. And I would imagine, I mean, if we all sat down, if the whole world sat down and meditated, what do you think the energy and the power of that kind of experience could do? Do you buy into the power of a collective energy?
I think the idea that quantum physics points to in terms of the energetic field that we're all part of, and the fact that we as human beings are just atoms and molecules bobbing in time and space, and therefore are effectively just energy ourselves, points to the possibility of absolutely that we are affecting each other more than we realize. And therefore, and we've seen before collectively when people have organized on a global basis, great leaders in this space have organized collective moments where people have meditated together, and there's an energetic resonance that can be felt as a result of that. So absolutely, I mean, the Dalai Lama, he spoke about, if we could get to the point of 1 billion people in the world meditating regularly, it would shift consciousness, because the energy of those 1 billion people would flow out and begin to affect other people. So that's a big test to orchestrate. But I see it on a very small level when I meditate with a group of people, even through an online medium like we're on right now, that collectively there's a shift when we're doing that and focused in a certain way together. So certainly I can see how that is a possibility.
Well, Natascha, off the screen just now, Andy and I were discussing about what is it in terms of like our daily lives. What is it people like you? What is like, Andy, what do you do, say, for example, to people like me that I can benefit from in terms of my daily lives?
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of things, but the starting point is always asking, I always come back to the person and say, well, why do you want to meditate? A lot of people sort of have read, there's lots of material available right now. They've said, oh, meditation does this, meditation does that. I want this, I'm struggling with this. So finding out what you want from it and then being able to suggest whether that's a possibility or not is a starting point for people. But meditation, when you begin to practice meditation, there's all sorts of byproducts from that. It helps you become more focused. It helps you to breathe better, and breathing better helps clear, excuse me, clear toxins from the body. There you go, just clearing out toxins from the body. It helps you to sleep better, so you have more energy, right? It helps you connect to yourself in a way that you haven't before, like we were talking about earlier. And as soon as you learn to connect to yourself, it helps you then have empathy for others, because you understand some of the challenges that you're going through, and therefore you can relate to others more readily. There's a greater sense of compassion and kindness for others. So there's a bunch of things that begin to happen. It regulates your circulation. It regulates your digestion. So there's all different parts of the body and breath that are beginning to be impacted when you just come to a stillness, turn your attention to a single point, and keep returning that attention to a single point.
I feel quite meditative right now. I think I feel like I'm drifting off into la la la. No, I'm just gonna stop you there because I want to ask a question. Hold on a sec, because this has been a question I've wanted to find out for a really long time. Okay.
This is a sign of a really great interview.
Yeah, there is an idea around the fact that kindness and gratitude and love is something that we bestow on ourselves in an act when we bestow it on other people. So in loving others, we love ourselves. In being kind to others, we are kind to ourselves. There is a cyclical attitude when it comes to those things. But I'm curious about this whole idea around when I was okay. Let me just start this again because it doesn't make any sense. I was watching this amazing guy, the guy who wrote the books, the things about God. What was it? He wrote. What was the name?
Conversations with God. Neil Donald Walsh.
Yes.
Neil Donald Walsh.
Thank you. I was watching an interview with him, and he was talking about an experience that he had where somebody had stolen something, and the response, instead of running after the guy and grabbing it off him and calling the police, was to actually confront him and say to him, listen, if you need that so badly, I am going to give that to you, because obviously you need it more than I do. And therefore, I respect the fact that you need it more than I do, and therefore I'm going to give it to you. So I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I get that. But then I'm thinking, when does the point of kindness become when you're being screwed over? Like, when are you, when is it? When is the too good for, and everybody else around you is not too good, and they're not being too nice, and they're not meditating, and they're not into kindness, and you're actually being screwed over.
And they take advantage of you.
Yeah. Does that make any sense as a question?
Yeah. Where I come from in respect to that question is understanding to learn to set appropriate boundaries, and a lot of
Okay.
that's informed from our journey in childhood, and beginning to understand what are appropriate boundaries and what are not. And I think the observation that Neil Donald Walsh there was speaking from, perhaps, is that in the bigger picture, that person probably was more needy than what he was for that particular object that was stolen from him. And so therefore he can stand in that position and go, you know what, I get your need, and and that's okay. And yet we still need to be able to set a boundary to go, well, what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. And in that case, he can probably register that that person is more needy. But there's many people who aren't as needy as that person who was on the street, who are trying to take advantage of you as well.
Okay.
And learning to stand into that space where you're able to recognize that and have the courage and the voice to establish what your need is in any given circumstance is a practice in itself. And there's deep unconscious filters that we're running all of the time that are governing whether we will or we won't do that. Coming into the awareness of knowing, oh, there I am acting in that way. There's that behavior emerging again. That's me allowing myself to be trampled over. That's a
Okay.
practice in itself. And
Is that the
absolutely.
goal of meditation, to become fully aware of our inner self, like, for lack of a better word?
I think awareness, meditation, I would say often that awareness is where we start with meditation, and awareness is where we end also. So it's coming to the awareness of, oh, what's going on in my body, what's going on in my breath, what's going on in my mind. And as we become more aware, we then have the possibility to respond to that in a different way. And we need to cultivate then a different response. So for example, in meditation, many people, when they first begin, become aware of being tired. And they think meditation is making them tired. No, meditation is just making them aware that they're tired. So with that awareness, I can then choose an action. I can get to bed early tonight, right? But I can choose not to pay attention to that, right? And if I don't, I'm still going to be tired. Meditation is not fixing being tired there. Meditation is bringing the awareness to what's there. And then there's an action we need to take. We've got to cultivate a different response. So meditation, to begin with, Dr. Vincent, is about just bringing awareness to what is.
So are you saying that it's almost like meditation is not something to solve certain issues, even though, like you said, some people who come to you, or even yourself, the reason why you started learning of meditation is because you're experiencing stress. But from what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost better to get into meditation, to train yourself to meditate as a tool to sort of kind of prevent things from being bad, from going like out of control.
I would go so far as to say that meditating is as important to us as sleeping, eating the right food, and moving the body. Okay, we understand these days, because the amount of science and research that's been done, that each of those elements of activity in our life, choosing good food, getting the right amount of sleep, contribute to who we are and allow us to turn up in a certain way. Meditation brings an awareness to each of those aspects and more. And yes, absolutely. I would always encourage people to start meditating before they have a problem to solve. But we as humans are typically slow. We are reactive. We tend to, Natascha mentioned at the top, her first journey with it, end of last year, was about, I'm going through a demanding time in my life. There's certain anxieties around certain things. What can help me? I was in a certain situation dealing with stress, needing to be more focused. What can help me? So yes, it's nice to say that, start doing it now before you have the problem. But the reality for most people is they'll only come to it once they have a problem. And it's always harder. But then when we start meditating and we get a little bit of relief, the encouragement from then is then build a foundation, because when the next challenge comes along, you're going to be better equipped to respond a little bit better than simply react from your conditioned set of beliefs or way of being in that situation.
So you came from a trading floor and into fashion. You've actually done quite a lot of different things. You've recreated and reinvented yourself a myriad of times. It's not just once or twice. You have been a conscious reinventor of yourself from a business point of view, and obviously, but the one thing that seems to have stayed is this meditation element to your life that you seem to have applied to your day-to-day living, and you're now actually a meditation teacher. I mean, this moment is a business that teaches people how to meditate. You must really, really believe that it is a path to a completely transformed life.
Yeah, I guess that comes from my own experience with it, Natasha, is that I've seen just steadily over, over 20 years now, where in different situations in my life where it's been relevant, where I was dealing with, high-powered job in a corporate organization, how it supported me there. I went through a health crisis when I came back to Sydney, and where I was diagnosed with diabetes. And that was where my deepening journey into this as a pathway of understanding really started to take a foothold. And so it's helped me navigate that journey in terms of my own personal health. It's helped me navigate my way through personal relationship crises. So I've seen it when it's been in action and how it's supported me in different parts of my life. And then as I've continued to deepen into it, it's my journey with it has shifted slightly to solving some of these problems or becoming a supporting tool to becoming a quite significant focus in terms of understanding my own mind. So yes, absolutely, I'm convinced. But it's only come about through experience.
Dr. Vincent, do you have another question? Because
I do.
I've got thousands. I've got thousands.
Of
I could
questions,
railroad
but
you to
I'm trying to be respectful because when you went off just now, I basically had my personal consultation. Yes, I did, and then finally I got the answer because literally before Andy answered the question, you cut off the connection.
Okay.
Anyway, another thing that you posted through Instagram, which I really think that you should. People really need to follow your Instagram, because just scrolling this afternoon I learned so much. And another thing that I took from your Instagram, which I actually reposted, is that pictures of, it's almost like a classified ads that people normally take from the pole or from the traffic light, and it says that take at least one. And what does it mean is that take a chance, because people need to take a chance. And when I read that, the first thing that struck my mind was that sometimes we have to take a chance, not for other people, but for ourselves. What do you think of that? Is that something that was meant to when you posted that?
Well, I think taking a chance is always for ourselves first. I think the idea of being outwardly focused and helping others is quite altruistic, but it's very hard to help others unless you're helping yourself first. And taking a chance for yourself and charting a course that is confronting and scary and you might be quite fearful about. I believe that the universe is set up to support us to succeed. And all it's asking us to do is take a step. And when we're typically wanting to step off into something new and to take that chance that you're referring to, it's going to be scary. The most successful people, if you listen to them talk about anything, it wasn't that they weren't scared. It wasn't that they didn't have any fear. It was that they faced that and then went, I'm going to do it anyway. And in facing that and stepping forward, they went, oh, there's a whole new place that I couldn't even see from where I was. And now that I've taken that step, it's opened up. And I have experienced it myself, where I take those steps, continually having to confront, okay, I'm really nervous about that. I don't think I'm good enough. And I find the courage, or I'm supported by others. And that's a very important part of that, is to have the support of others to help you take that step. And then when you do, you just go, oh, why was I so worried about that? Wow, here I am, and this is all okay, and I'm okay, and I'm doing okay, and people are beginning to listen to me. I've had a client just talking about it the other day, just saying, well, Andy, I just didn't think I was good enough or had something to offer. And then all of a sudden I had these people commenting on the post that I made on LinkedIn, and someone wanting to repost it. And I said, yeah, it's always there. It's always there. It's just wanting us to take that first step, to take that chance that you're referring to. And when you do, you show the path, you show the path for others to be able to follow. When you
They
take
say
that
that
chance, it gives the impetus to, for others to be able to do the same.
absolutely. They say that living with regret is worse than never trying at all. In fact, dying
Yes.
with regret is a terrible way to go. So you actually do have to make a step. Now, I want to just ask a little bit about the actual the process. So on the odd occasion when I feel like I may have successfully meditated, and I honestly, when I say successfully, it is probably for about 3 seconds, because as I get to the point where my brain goes blank, the other part of my brain goes, "You're doing it, you're doing it, you're doing it." It's the most irritating thing, and I can't stop the irritating little voice that keeps saying, "You're doing it, you're doing it." I wish she would shut up, because she's really just stuffing up my whole process. But anyway, so on the odd occasion when I've kind of got there and I can feel, I get this sensation, and I think it's almost quite addictive. I call it a bliss ball. So I get what I call a bliss ball, and it's like a mini. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound terrible, but it's like a mini orgasm, like a body, like your body goes into this bliss feeling, and it can be literally like a second, but it's like everything inside you just lights up. It's and I mean, I haven't had that many, and I've chased it because it's now become my chase. But when you get there, Andy, when you get to a point where you are in that zone, do you have any particular experience? Is there something that happens for you?
There's all sorts of experiences that begin to happen along the lines of what you're talking about, Natasha, because the mind it's a little bit like a conversation about an iceberg. What we see above the surface is only 10%. And because we haven't spent much time, there is an incredible amount of bliss to be experienced. And it can be different for everyone. I mean, there are common themes to some of that. The process of uncovering that is part of the journey to begin with. And learning to then sustain that and hold that is another part of the journey. Because it's about embodying that, so that it's not just that momentary orgasm that you were talking about that is fleeting, really, but that we sustain it.
Okay.
And
Is that
hold
through
on to
practice?
that.
Like,
And that's through
what can you
practice,
actually
Dr.
do?
Vincent. Yeah, that is through practice. That is like sustaining. So sitting here right now, there's a sense within myself of this spaciousness. There's this sense of being calm, of tingling, of being alive. And it's a sensation that's cultivated through time. And it doesn't mean that you don't drop out of that, because the thinking mind kicks in. Like you said, it starts thinking about the experience rather than being in the experience. I referred to earlier as meditation, being. It's a state of being. So it's experiencing that. And then what happens is we get all excited and go, whoa, what's that? Oh my goodness, whoa.
And then you're like, you're done. I mean, exactly, it's that moment. It's a horrible. I was just
where's it gone? Where's it gone?
And then you chase it, and then you're like chasing it, it's horrible.
But we chase it in a way that's not conducive to getting it back. Okay, because we forget what cultivated that experience, and the practice is what cultivated that experience, and we forget, and we start trying to think that experience back. And what we need to do is...
Do you also think that's because it's so rare? That's why, like you said, you're chasing it with a wrong approach, with the wrong way. But once you start having a lot more of that, it's sort of it's almost like if you haven't eaten the whole week and you see a piece of chocolate cake, you would really attack the cake. However, if you have the cake every day, you would still eat it because it's a really nice chocolate cake, but you would eat it elegantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key to meditation, is that it's a daily practice. Because as you do it on a daily basis, what you're doing is continually topping up the chocolate cake. So it's not even you're getting to eat it and have your cake. You're topping it up. The practice is what's giving you the experience of, wow, that's a delicious chocolate cake, and I'm experiencing it right now. And at the same time, it's still there. It's still completely there and always available.
This is probably the interview that I smiled the most, because I had seriously, well, not just because of the chocolate cake, but I seriously had several light bulb going on in my mind, like moments every time you say something, Andy.
Great. And there's more and more of that. And it's about the consistency of the practice gives us access to this. But equally, it's important to remember that there are challenges as part of this as well. You know, Natascha, you were referring to that in an earlier conversation that we were having, you know, before we were on air, about the question of, okay, but what are the challenges to this? You know, it, like learning any skill, like when you were learning to write and be a journalist and conceive ideas and communicate those, when you were studying your PhD and thinking about, okay, well, how do I extract all of the goodness out of the apple? It doesn't happen all at once, right? It never happened all at once. There was a progression that happened over time, and we keep progressing.
Why should meditation be different?
Why does it? Yeah. And everyone's going, oh, they sit down for meditate and they do it for 3 weeks and they go, why haven't I got it? A lot of the time we want to be able to do it, tick it off the list. I've done it. Now I've built that in.
And I think that's a very interesting thing. You know, one of the things that you do in yoga, and for me, yoga is such a meditative experience, is that you practice. The word practice is really important. You don't do yoga. You don't succeed at yoga. You practice. And it's constantly a practice. And every time you get on the mat, you begin from the beginning. And what they say often is you need to start this journey forgetting everything you've ever learned before and start it as if you're starting it for the very first time all over again. And that often, I think, is how we need to maybe view life, is that you go into things with fresh eyes, with a different opinion or an idea about how you're going to experience that, so that it becomes something that you just almost innocently kind of confronts. And I think meditation's the same. It's a practice. So you're never going to get good. You're going to just keep trying.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a practice. I think you change, your experience of it begins to change. And some people might put a label of, I become better at it, but the label's inadequate to I guess, describe the experience of it. The experience becomes more complete. It becomes deeper. It becomes a deeper level of awareness of your own experience, a deeper level of your own emotion, a deeper level of the sensation within your body, a deeper level of how the breath moves within you. So it's changing all the time with the practice. But yes, in Zen Buddhism, they refer to that exact thing, the beginner's mind, continually coming back. And that's coming back from an intellectual point of view, because intellectually we get in the way. We want it to be that, oh, I had that experience yesterday, I want to have it again. And as soon as you start grasping like that, it's out of reach, because it wasn't through the grasping that experience arose. It was by allowing.
Does it mean that as part of progressing, the word, I don't even know whether this is an English word or not, but unlearning is just as important as learning? Does it make sense?
Yes, it's an interesting one. Yeah, look, it's not so much about the unlearning, but it's allowing the new experience to continually build. So from a cognitive science or a neural pathway point of view, you begin to build a pathway that becomes a stronger pathway. Because once we have neural pathways established, like I talk with my hands a lot, for me to not talk with my hands, I have to be super conscious, right?
Yes.
And I hold, so now I'm talking to you and I'm aware that my hands aren't moving. And then within a moment, my hands go again. So I have to first become conscious of that's what I do. Then I have to make a choice about going, is it worthwhile changing that? Okay, then I need to start taking action over and over again. Every time it moves, bring it back down. Every time it moves, bring it back down, over and over. So the natural pathway that I then default to is not talking with my hands anymore. So that becomes the dominant neural pathway that governs how I do things. And so with meditation, what we're doing is cultivating new neural pathways so that in any given circumstance, a stressful situation, typically I go like this and I respond and react and I say this to this particular person because that's what we've always done, right? Because they trigger me in a certain way. Meditation gives me the ability, firstly, to pause and go, oh, this is happening, to recognize in that moment that this is happening again. And typically I respond or react in this way. And in that moment of pausing, go, there's a different possibility. And I could do this, or I could say nothing. And in doing so, we then begin to change the nature of that experience. And so it's not so much an unlearning, but beginning to observe how I am, how I behave based on my current learning, and beginning to build a new pathway, from new learning to go, hey, there's an alternate now. And there's an alternate possibility. And maybe that alternate possibility will change the experience just in this moment.
This moment.
Now.
I love this moment. It's actually one of the most, I find those two words quite calming.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Just saying it calms you down.
You just said this moment, and it has an incredible trigger. I think you were very lucky to get that as a business name, because I looked at it and I was like, this moment, and I was like, it really makes you think, like, yes, what is this moment? What are we doing right now? Why is this moment? This is the most important moment. I mean, I've got this wonderful therapist, and I've been with her for like 10 years, and she's absolutely marvelous. She really is. And we often talk about the future, because I can be quite anxious about, what's going to happen in the future and where we're going. And I think that's a very normal thing, especially when you become middle-aged. You start to worry about, where you're going. And we were talking about today, about the fact that we don't know. That all there is really is literally this moment right now.
That's what they call it, the present.
The present. Well, present if I'm also giving you a present. The pathways and the other thing I was going to ask as well is, there seem to be different forms of meditation. Like, people talk about transcendental meditation and other kinds. And then I get confused, and I'm like, well, which meditation should you be doing? Is there different forms of meditation, or is there really just like one God and we just get there different ways?
Yeah, I think there's definitely different ways to the same result. When people talk about different meditation, they're often talking about different styles of meditation. You are using transcendental meditation, Vedic, mindfulness, whatever it might be. Most of the time when people are speaking in those terms, essentially they're talking about the object for focus in the meditation. So in transcendental meditation or Vedic meditation, they use a mantra.
Okay.
But mantra is used in many meditations. Mantra is a part of my practice, but I don't practice TM or Vedic meditation. Okay, it's part of many traditions. Mindfulness tends to have a focus on the breath, but it's not exclusive that. We can be mindful of the sound that surrounds us. Mindfulness is both a meditation practice and a way of being. People focus on a candle, they focus on a deity. What they're really talking about is the anchor point. What do we focus our mind to over and over again to bring it back when it wanders all over the place? That's essentially what people are talking to begin with, okay? And it can be confusing, you're right, because people, well, what's right for me? And coming back to a comment you made earlier, Dr. Vincent, about, well, I'm this type of person.
Yeah.
Is there something that might suit me better? And that might be, and that generally is a process of trying. It's trial and error. Do a practice. There are two things that I always recommend to people. One is finding a style that suits you, and then finding a teacher that you resonate with. Because a teacher is really important to help you overcome all the pitfalls. We can all do it and try to do it by ourselves. That was my beginning journey when I came to it in London. I thought, I can do this,
That's me. That's what I thought. I thought, well, I'll just get an online course and I can do this. But I'm talking to you and I'm listening to you. And actually, you just answered my question, because I was going to go, how do you work with a teacher when you're supposed to be still and mindful?
And about yourself.
Yeah. So how does that journey work?
Meditation has to start with the experience. So we're talking about meditation at the moment, but it can't really happen until you begin to experience it. And what I propose we do here is just a little experiment, perhaps.
Okay.
What I'd like you both to do is just close down your eyelids. And anyone listening, close down your eyelids. Rest your hands somewhere comfortably in your lap. Just feel the weight of the body in the chair. And in a moment, I'm going to say go. Okay, and when I say go, I want you to just start counting your breath. Inhalation, exhalation, 1. Inhalation, exhalation, 2. And just keep counting until I tell you to stop. Okay, so that's all you need to do. And to begin with, I just want you to start paying attention to your breath. Just begin to feel it happening. Notice where you're experiencing your breath. And then go. and then stop. Stop the counting. And then when you're ready, just slowly come to open your eyes. And just begin to notice what you feel. What was the experience like? What do you notice? What do you feel now?
I found the whole thing quite peaceful and quite sort of, when you focus on the breath, it's quite rhythmic. So for me, it moves like a ship, backwards and forwards, like a rocking chair. You rock in and you rock out, and you rock in and you rock out. So it's quite, when you soothe, people, when they soothe, they rock, and I get that sensation. So for me, it's quite calming, quite peaceful. And yeah, I think you should be my teacher.
I felt that I was levitating.
Right. Okay. So you felt like you're levitating.
Lighter and lighter and lighter, and I felt almost like I was levitating.
Okay. So now you've started to have some experience, and that was just a minute, right? That was just a minute of focusing on your breath. Okay. Just counting it. You might have got lost in your count at some stage. The mind might have wandered, and then you came back to it. And then there was some of these experiences beginning to happen. So from there, we can then begin to explore the meditation. Until we had done that, the idea, if I had said, well, if you just focus on your breath, Dr. Vincent, you're going to become lighter and lighter and have this experience of levitating. You would have looked at me and gone, well, you're a bit cuckoo. I don't, how can that happen in the space of a minute?
That, I was like, I hope I didn't sound cuckoo.
So
why not try at home? Like, this is, I don't know, I can't even explain why, but that's what I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. So we begin to, just by focusing our attention, what was happening, we were doing multiple things. You were doing multiple things right now. Okay. To speak to some of those, you were focusing your attention to a single point. That was your breath. All of a sudden, your attention from all the thoughts, the ideas, the thinking about the questions for me, all that sort of stuff just came into a single point. So what happened is everything else started to quieten down. Single point of focus. By focusing on your breath, you started to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is the stress response. This is the rest and digest. So all of a sudden, your body's beginning to calm down. Okay? So all of a sudden, the energy transfer is beginning to change. You're beginning to become aware internally. We're focused internally. We're not out there in the world, distracted by sensory experience. We're in here on the sense experience of the breath, just moving. So we're beginning to transform our experience of consciousness. So there's a lot going on, and that was 1 minute.
So can I ask you, I think it's probably a good time to actually kind of come to the end of the interview. I could probably talk to you when we met at a party, and I think I just whooshed and you sat on the other side, and we watched some crazy people, and all I wanted to do was just extract information from you, because, I found your journey so fascinating and so interesting, and it's things that I'm really interested in. But do you have like a class that people could join? I mean, is there a group class?
How can people get
I'd like to join that group class, and I reckon Dr. Vincent probably would. But I mean, how do we do classes or something that you have?
Yeah, well, there's different ways you can connect. But one of the things that's been very opportune in terms of the times that we're living in, last year, I had been thinking about this for a while, is how to connect people. People are very busy. And how do we bring people together? Because even getting to a class can be an inhibiting factor to someone starting this.
Yeah.
And last year, I went through a whole testing process using this platform we're on right now, thinking about remote meditation, but having it as a live class. So you still had teacher-led connection, you still had sense of community. And we went through 3 months of testing. In November, we launched our live online meditation platform.
Oh, really? So there is one.
So there is.
Okay, I'm so excited.
So you can definitely join, and we can send you information about that, and I'll give you an email address that you can email to get that information, and any of the viewers can email and just join in. In fact, I've even got an introductory offer for anyone, Eastside Radio subscribers, listeners, where I'm quite happy for people to come and have a month free access to the platform.
Oh, really?
And come and experience meditation and see what it's like with me and with the community and what we do. And then if they like it and if it's working and it's making a difference, then they can subscribe. It's a subscription service. And you can sign up. And we have 6 classes a week, Monday to Friday. Every day there's a class at different times of the day, because there's different benefits for meditating at different times of the day. There's some early mornings like 6 and 6:45 a.m. There's
Yeah,
lunchtime.
not for me, that one.
Not for that one. You never
No,
know.
no,
Somebody said
no.
that to me, Dr. Vincent, and all of a sudden they've transformed from being an evening person to getting up in the morning and going, this is transforming my experience of life, being up at this time of the day.
I'm
never know.
up for this. This is for me. And I think in a way, I always find that I interview people. I get I'm lucky because I get to choose who we interview. Dr. Vincent gets to ask the awesome questions, but he is the scientist who's got his stuff in Woolworths and making millions. I, on the other hand, have much more time on my hands. But I always feel that I choose the people to interview at the time when I need something, but they bring something to my life and I'm like, oh yeah, I need that, and I need that, and I need that. So is there a website, or what is the email address?
No, so if you just email luke@thismoment.com.au.
Okay, Luke.
Yes.
Okay.
Luke is our community and business manager.
If you are interested in getting a little month free to check out the meditation and work a little bit, you need to mention Living Out Loud when you email luke@thismoment.com.au. And to follow Andy on Instagram, I'm going to let him say the words to you so that we get them perfectly right.
Yes, our Instagram handle is thismoment.now.
Thismoment.now. And we will be ending this interview. By the way, you'll be getting some merch. We do these fabulous mugs, which Dr. Vincent will be sending you so that you can drink your green tea out of.
Beautiful.
And you are now considered a friend of the show, which Dr. Vincent also coined.
So you're no longer a guest, you're a friend to the show. And I learned a lot from our conversation. It's only an hour, but I've learned a lot. And as I said to you just now, Andy, I told Natasha too, if I am not listening to this podcast, if I'm not doing this podcast, this is the podcast that I will be listening to, because just from the past hour, I learned so much from you. So thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you both for having me. It's been a great conversation with all its ups and downs and the beauty of what happened.
Well, we'll be up and we'll be running. So you've been listening to the Living Out Loud with Natascha and Dr. Vincent. We will be back with another fantastic interview. Make sure that you have a look at both our podcast and our YouTube channel if you prefer one or the other. Thank you, Andy. It's been an absolute joy. And Dr. Vincent, bye.
Bye-bye.